Hi everyone, I'm Nick and I'm an administrator for the Ultimate Stock Aitken Waterman Facebook group. Thanks for joining us today for the exclusive interview with Mike Stock. Thanks for submitting all your questions. Hopefully we'll have enough time to get through them all. So without further ado, it's time to introduce Mr. Mike Stock.
Hi Nick, nice to see you here.
Thank you very much for taking the time to see me.
It's a pleasure actually. I don't know what you're going to ask me yet, but I'll do my best.
Oh, we've got lots of good questions. Right, before we get into the main bulk of the members' questions, could you just give us a bit of history of how Stock Aitken Waterman came together? Like, for example, you started in a band with Matt Aitken.
Yes, that would be around 1981, I think. Because we needed a guitarist, because the other one had got drunk and fallen off the stage. Guitarists always did that to me. Matt turned up for the audition in his suit and he was perfect for the job. He knew all the songs. We did the Royal Garden Hotel in Kensington that very evening. So that's how we got together. But by 1984, by the New Year's Eve 1983, I'd said to the band members, look, we could keep doing it. We could have kept going on till I was 70, you know. So I sort of made up my mind I was going to go and produce records, and I built a studio underneath my house. And I said to the band, I'm going to knock the gigs on the head and I'm going into the studio. I'm not coming out till I'm a successful record producer. That was the aim anyway. But what happened was Matt said, well, if you're doing that, I'd like to come with you. The rest of the band all went their separate ways. So by 1984, the beginning of January, we're downstairs and we came up with this idea for a track, Agents Aren't Aeroplanes. We put together a band. We found two girls who'd front it and put this demo idea down. See, Pete Waterman had produced a song of mine with Pete Collins, One Line for a Lady Breaker, a few years before that. So I was saying to Matt, where do we go? We've got this. I thought, well, hang on, there's Pete Waterman. He liked the songs that we did. Perhaps he'll like this. So we made an appointment January the 15th, which was around his birthday actually. And I made an appointment with what they call Red Box and Rack Records. And the Rack guy wasn't there. The Red Box bloke said he'd get back to us. Knocked on Waterman's door, he wasn't there either. He'd gone to the airport. But the girl said to us, come back 2 o'clock or something. So and I had no money at all. So we just wandered and found a cafe, had a cup of tea. And we'd already walked from London Bridge because we didn't have any money for a taxi. So we actually walked up to Camden. So we went back there at 2 o'clock, Pete was there, I told him the idea. I had a manual, I prepared a manual, but he couldn't read. Pointless. So he liked the idea and he said, we'll go in the studio, and after a bit of toing and froing, we went in on February the 14th. So that's the first job we did at the Marquee in Wardour Street, was for Agents Aren't Aeroplanes, and that became our first sort of hit record. And that introduced me to Phil Harding and Mike Picking, who was a maintenance man there, and Rob Waldron, who was the tape op assistant. And why that's important is because after a year in the Marquee, with all the equipment going wrong, and Mike Picking being phoned up at 4 o'clock in the morning to come back from Southend, where he lived, to fix it, I said to Pete, we need our own studio. And Pete was, you can't make any money out of studios, Mike. And we were just working with Dead or Alive, by the way. We didn't know it, but we just recorded our first number one. We didn't know that. So I'm saying, no, Pete, we've got to get it. I knew the Vineyard. Matt and I had been there before, worked there, and it was in South London, suited us in terms, because Matt was living with me at the time, so we were handy for it. And I said to Pete, we've got to get this place. And I said, and we need Phil Harding, and we need Mike Picking, because he's a technical guy, and we need Rob Waldron, because he was a great assistant to us, and that could be our team. So I left it with Pete. We went over to the studio, everyone doing frantic measurements and everything else to get things sorted out. And Pete went and approached Phil Harding and poached him and Mike and Rob from the Marquee. But They weren't happy to see him go because but I think the marquee realised it was on its last legs, really. The equipment was old and they were going to have to invest an awful lot of money. So in a way, they're kind of pleased to see him go, in a way. I don't mean that in any way that they weren't good at their job, but they were brilliant, and that's why we wanted them. So I don't know whether that's a good place to sort of start, really, because we did our first year in Wardour Street, and then by 1985, we've got going now in the Vineyard.
So Mike, there's been several reissues of classic Saw produced albums, including Kylie, Reissues, Bananarama. How much, if any, input do you have in what goes on?
Oh, blimey. Nothing. No input. I was asked to do. No, what was I asked to do? The sleeve notes, or to contribute to sleeve notes was one of them. But when I read what they'd already got, it was so far off the truth. I can't even begin with this.
Yeah.
Because I'll be tearing it all up and starting again. Blow it. Just let them do it. Put the stuff out. I mean, they, after all, most of it is other people's decisions. The ownership of the recordings was the big bone of contention that Matt and I had. But although we've never had a ruling at court on that because we pulled out of it after a week, it's something I'm just letting go. So I don't bother myself with it.
But you would still earn money through the sales of the records, obviously, the publishing.
Do you know, I do get the publishing money, obviously, from the songs. I should be getting production royalties from the music, but as yet we haven't got anything. I doubt whether they'll have sold enough, because they've got to cover. You only get paid that after they cover their costs, and they're expensive, those box sets.
Yeah, they're not cheap.
Yeah, so I get the royalties that I'm entitled to on the publishing side of things, but on the other stuff I've kind of think there's not much going to be earned from it because of the cost of producing it,
But with the Love List collections, you obviously have total control over what's put out there.
That's absolutely right, because I own the recordings of those, and I own the Go 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 stuff and other stuff that I've done, Fast Food Rockers and such like. But I've never, I just wanted to touch on the point that there's the PWL years, which are the Vineyard Studios, Stock Aitken Waterman working, and then there are other things that people call PWL, but that's really, it's not Saw.
No. So things like that Phil Harding would produce or remix with the PWL name.
Yeah, that's right. And I always want to draw a distinction between PWL and Saw. I do want to make that clear that they're not interchangeable.
No.
They are separate entities. So after the PWL years, we get the Union Street years, Love This Records years, and after that we've got like Go 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 and Fast Food Rockers. And last year, having built my studio, having gone through all the crap that I went through with the London Underground and various legal actions, amongst them the Pete Waterman thing, I decided I'd do a pop act. What I thought was a pop act, but...
It's been said that you're not a fan of the remixes that PWL released of your tracks. Can you let us know why?
Well, now, this is an interesting point to me, anyway. In the studio, Nick, what we did was, Matt and I invariably would record onto tape 6 minutes. We always had the 12-inch in mind.
Okay.
That was always our concept. Right from the very earliest records, Divine, Hazeldean, we did 6 minute. They were the extended versions for the clubs, for the DJs, because we'd start off, build it up a bit slowly with the drums, then they could fade out of one into the crossfade into another, then we'd finish with a minute of drums at the end so you can fade out and cross. That was all to help the DJs. So Matt and I were always structuring our thinking along a 6 minute format. And all of the big hits, which had club dance versions associated with them, the first one was our one. The remixes would take it somewhere else. So Matt and I have prepared a 3 minute radio version and a 6 minute extended club dance version, call it what you want, by laying it out on tape that way. So the mixing engineers would come in, press the play button, the drums are there, then the chorus, then the song, then some more drums, then a middle bit, and a bit of breakdown. It's all in place, and engineers like Phil Harding and P. Hammond and Dave Ford would do stuff to it and add their percentage. But the concept of a 6-minute dance version was already embedded into what we did. So as far as I was concerned, that was the best version.
Okay.
But what other people did, in an attempt to make it sound different, they mess about with the tune.
So to appeal to clubs and things, obviously different.
Well, they do other versions of it, which always, in my view, was a worse version.
Because it's changing your original concept
Not
of the
because
song.
of the change. I'm quite happy people come and change things for the better, you know. But the problem with that is that you've got people who haven't understood what the song was all about in the first place, and all they're interested in doing is changing it for its own sake, because we already had covered the ground. So that's why I normally didn't like them. There are one or two which I did like, and one or two which I thought improved a position. But by and large, I didn't like them, no.
Stefan Pellet, who's now the owner of the group, would like to know, are you planning a follow-up single for Nikki French to This Love?
Yes, we are. Well, This Love, I wanted it out last summer because of the gay marriage laws and the changes that were happening in that, and the sort of battle, because the concept of the song was 2 years before that, because I could see that coming, and I talked to Nikki about it back then, and I ran the idea past her, and I said, I can see the video. Actually, I wanted her on a throne somewhere in the universe looking down on the planet, and because it's all about the sun and moon colliding and all that sort of stuff. That was sort of my concept. But the idea being, you've got an old couple, an old gay married couple, if you like, because that's what it all means now. It means that when you commit to a person, you're committing like you would be as if you were a man and a woman. You're committing for life, and so I don't think anyone's really dealt with that properly yet. But that's what the song's all about. And so Nikki agreed to do it, and we obviously did it last year. And I have agreed with Nikki that we'll do something this summer. But I think that's what we'll do. We'll get a record out in the next couple of months, and maybe put it out in August. That will be a plan.
Have you got a song in mind already?
No. No, I mean, I will sit down and get that sorted out about 24 hours before we actually do it with her. Which is the normal thing.
We'll see the whole world crumble. We're gonna see the mountains tumble. Before we say goodbye, my lover and I. Oh, we'll see the earth dividing. We'll see the sun and moon colliding. Before this love would ever die.
Stefan also wants to know, are you any further forward on your plans to record with Sonya? Because I believe she tweeted you about...
I tweeted her as well, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd love to do that, something with Sonya. I'd also love to pick out some of the other acts. I'd love to put an 80s album together based on those artists, where you rejuvenate the songs that they were famous for, and then add a couple of new ones into the pot, so you get a full album's worth. You know.
Would it just be soul artists, or are you talking about generally 80s artists?
No, generally soul artists, but one or two sort of iconic, as long as they're pop and in the world that I'm.
The name Bucks Fizz gets
well,
mentioned.
we've already, because it's an exclusive sort of interview, I've got to be careful, but we have recorded with Bucks Fizz this year, and I went to finish off their little tour. I went down to the Seven Oaks. I had a couple of meetings with them, and I have a plan that I hope will materialise, but it's basically, we've already recorded with them a couple of their original hits, and I'm writing for them.
So they've re-recorded their
I've
original hits,
re-recorded with them so far 2 of their big hits.
which we probably could guess.
You probably couldn't, actually. Well, it's not making your mind up.
Right.
I'm not touching that one. I think that, with all the visuals associated with Eurovision, that's iconic, and I'm leaving that to where it is. But a couple of the others, and writing for them. So that's the plan. In fact, they're in the next couple of weeks again.
with regards to the writing, are you writing in a style that's set in the 80s, as in new?
Well, it's a good question, of course, but to me, a pop song is a pop song is a pop song. And with them, it will have a little dance routine, because they always did one, and it will have a dance beat. So, you know, I suppose if that means 80s, then fair enough. But I think they automatically stamp it with who they are. You know, so, and you know what, they're good singers and they're good artists, and crowd loved them when I saw them.
Yeah, I do follow them on Facebook and Twitter, and they've seen the pictures from their tours.
But you see, like a lot of others from that period, they've been ignored by the sort of trendy, the record label, nobody wants to know about them, but really they're part of our culture, and we shouldn't ignore them.
No.
Well, I'm not ignoring them.
I can imagine the pressure that you have of obviously trying to write and produce a hit record for so many artists. This is obviously during your tour days, when you might have 3 or 4 artists coming in one day. How different is it for you now? You know, you're in your own studios, you work obviously mainly on your own, I would imagine.
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's an interesting point, because I was thinking to myself, if someone ever... I remember the day Pete Waterman walked in, just before we split up, and he walked into the office and did a whoop for joy because he'd received his cheque from Warner's for his first salary. I thought, this is the end. This is the end now. You're getting a salary. See, I've only ever been paid from the success. So you invest your time and your energy, you make a record, you hope people like it, and you sell it, then you get a cheque.
And if it doesn't sell, you don't get a cheque.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So suddenly to be told, here's some money, and you haven't actually done anything yet, sounds to me like too much of a temptation to sit around and do nothing. I think it takes the edge off you. So as for what I'm doing now, it's the same as it's always been. I mean, we are working on here, top of my head, 4, 5, 6 artists, I can't remember offhand, all with work that if I didn't say yes to anybody else, it'd still take me another 5 years to finish everything else I've said I'd do. So
you've not slowed down, then?
I don't think I have. There's not so much compulsion, and because the business is different. So the business side of it doesn't change. But me writing songs, making music, I do that every day. You know, that's what I do.
My friend Julie Hancock would like to know, is there any artist, dead or alive, that you would love to have worked with given the chance? Say, for example, Elvis. Would you have liked to have written, if you had been in that era, would you have written and produced for? No. But is there anyone that you would have loved to have written and produced for? From the 80s, is there any group or act in the 80s that you would love to have worked with then that you never got a chance to work with?
Okay.
Anyone that perhaps that were approached by Pete, or that turned you down, or you would love to have written a song for?
Well, Pete and I turned down Take That.
Yeah, I do believe that's one of it. He kicks himself every day with that one.
And we turned down Boyzone. I turned them down in the 90s. And so I've got more about who I'd turned down than I'd rather do. I can't think. Perhaps George, Michael and Wham, you know, Andrew Ridgeley in their heyday might have been a good pop outlet for us, you know. Because it's unashamed pop, you know, in those days. Got a bit heavy later.
Yeah.
So I can't really think of anybody. I'm really useless about this.
We can always come back to it. If you do remember anyone, we'll ask you later. Neil Thompson, he said he once read that I'd Rather Jack was originally going to be recorded by Mel and Kim, but with Mel's illness, it went to the Reynolds girls instead. He would like to know if that's true or false.
Not true.
I actually was listening to it on the car journey down, and you can actually hear Mel and Kim it's styled in the same sort of way.
We did style it. We did style it in the same way, but it wasn't written for them or intended for Mel and Kim. You know, it was Waterman who came up with the idea for having a sort of a dig at the radio DJs, because despite the sort of held belief, Saw didn't get radio.
No.
We
Capital played you.
Capital ended up playing us when they became the sound of a Bright Young Britain or whatever they were in the late 80s, but the only play we got on BBC was the chart rundown. So, you know, and that's to prove how far off the mark the industry was. Because I do remember, and I quote this quite a lot, that whenever they did the Radio 1 roadshow from the beach at Rill or somewhere, you know, they'd start off with our music, because there's 5,000 kids in front of them, and play something we can move around to.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, listen, Jason Donovan!
When radio DJs are in their ivory tower and can't see their audience, they'll play what they feel like playing. And they won't take their hint from what the public is buying, they just seem to be doing their own thing, you know. Because we know it's a vested interest, so the publishers have all got their in, the labels have got their fingers in the pie. But when you're exposed on a beach in Rhyl in July and there's 5,000 kids saying, okay,
We want Kylie.
go on then,
Yeah.
what are you going to give us? And they gave it the sore stuff, you know.
I've got a question from Evan Steer, who would like to know, he knows that you can sing, so he
Right.
wants to know, a big question, when are you going to put out a solo single?
Let me just think now. No, I won't be doing that. I used to sing in a band. I put out that One Line for a Lady Breaker that Pete Collins and Pete Waterman, you know, got done. So I've done stuff like that.
Obviously, the sore stuff with Roadblock and...
Oh yeah, I forgot about them. Yeah, we did Roadblock. Yeah, I've no plans for that. I'm too bloody old now.
Myself and Christian Crew would like to know, you've recently worked with Shanewold on his album. Are there any plans to do another? And if so, would you go down the crowdfunded route again?
Well, on the Shane scenario, after, I just want to put this into a context, because after I let the sort of Go 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 project was done, it was on television, and I was looking around to what to do, and I was being sort of, a girl called Laura Wharton from Liverpool was sending me some of her own songs, and I was giving her some feedback. And then she said, you've got to work with Shanewold. I said, why is that? She said, well, because, you know, he needs some songs, he's a great singer, etc., etc. And I said, well, okay, fine, yeah, ask him, sort of thing. I didn't believe she was going to do it. And she actually went and asked him. And we got together and we started to plan for the album. But for me, I'm not happy with the way it turned out. Partly because it's a year ago now, more or less. We finished the album last April. And we'd started to raise Shane's profile, and he gets offered this job at Coronation Street, and I had a contract with him and I could have held him to that, but then he really wanted to do Coronation Street, which is where I feel a bit let down by it all.
So it's conflicted between wanting to be an actor or a
Yeah,
singer.
and they said, look, Mike, if you wanna protect your own contract and prevent us from entering into this with Shane, then we'll step aside because we know you've got a contract. But then I thought about it, but then all I've got is a reluctant artist who's not really that bothered. He really wants to be an actor in a soap, which I found disappointing. Nevertheless, they said, and they signed him up and he started in the show, and I believe he's doing quite well. But he said he can't promote songs, he can't do concerts, he can't, because that would conflict with his credibility as an actor. So, you know, because I thought there might have been a possibility to do both, you know, but there isn't. So I'm disappointed that we put the effort and the time in, and a lot of the work that we were doing gave rise to the interest from ITV, you know, to sign him up, because he mentioned in some interview that he liked Coronation Street.
Okay.
So the next thing you know, they're going, well, do you want to be in it? And he couldn't resist it. So that's where we are. So I won't be working with Shane again. Although, you know, he's a great singer and we had a good time making the album.
With regards to that, it was because the album was released through Pledge Music.
Well,
Was that a conscious decision from your point, or as opposed to signing to a label? Or?
Well, look, I've said this all my life. Anybody asks me, for example, when somebody asks what's your favourite song, I always say, well, probably I Should Be So Lucky or Never Gonna Give You Up, because it's the one that sold the most. Because my job, I've always felt, is to please the public in any way. So when they say, we really like that one, I go, well, that makes it a favourite of mine. When the Shane thing came up, the choice was, I was being told by this Laura Wharton that he was very popular, people loved him and all that. I thought, well, I've got to have this proved to me, because it'd been 10 years since he'd won X Factor. So I chose the crowdfunding route because I thought, if enough people are going to tell me, yes, we'll buy his album and it's worth doing, then that's an endorsement of the principle that the public tell you what they want. So that's the reason we did it. But it was released on our own label, but the funding to promote it, etc., was through Pledge, and did very well. You know, we set the target wherever we set it, and we got up to beyond 200% of the target quite quickly. So it proved to me there was an audience there, and then we put the record out. But unfortunately, I mean, we got into the charts just about number 17, but but with no support from the industry. Nobody was really interested. I mean, it's the same thing as we had with Go Go Go. So they're too. There's not rich pickings anymore in the music industry. You know, that all changed. So they're not. Nobody's investing in artists. Nobody's saying, "Here's £1 million, promote." That doesn't happen now. So we did what we did with him. He went off and did. We had plans to put concerts on with Shane because he's a good singer, and I got the venue organised, and we had a ready-made audience. Those that had pledged, we were going to offer them all the tickets. You know, it was all going to be a plan that we could work through. But as soon as you got the Coronation Street job, then we are, you know, that's all in the rubbish bin.
Would you go down the crowdfunding route again for other artists?
I probably would for 80s artists, because, you know, they're not going to get a look in otherwise. You know, the TV's not going to play it. The TV channels that play music on Sky are not going to pick it up. Radio isn't going to play it. Unlikely. You know, you're not going to get on Graham Norton. You know, it's just so. If you put it on a crowdfunder and you know, 10,000 people say we want this, then you go, well, you know, that's the answer. We'll do it because people want it. And you're not going to get a hit from it. You're not going to get a chart position. I mean, do you know what's number one at the moment? Come on, Nick.
Off the top of my head, it was Mike Posner.
It was a pin in Ibiza. Is it still the same?
No, I think it's Drake now. Isn't it?
Well, I'm not sure myself even. Because that's how little we really know. I mean, years ago, you go, yep, it's Bucks Fizz number one, or it's, you know, whatever. So the charts have by their own faults, really, made themselves slightly irrelevant. And the industry itself is not getting behind. What should happen is there should be a Top of the Pops type of programme, whether it's that or something similar, that the whole industry can get behind as one chart that gets released and played on this show. You can see and hear the artists, and you can love them then. But, you know, you get such random stuff going in there now. And, you know, Mike Posner has recently gone in the press saying he's been number one all over the world, but he's earned no money. He's poor.
This is one of the questions I was going to ask as well with regards to streaming. Do you think that that's one of the downfalls with regards to streaming, like Spotify, Apple Music, and?
Well, you know, if you've got a record streamed on Spotify or people have clicked on it on YouTube, you might, if you can get the money, you'd be entitled to, under the rules as they exist, 0.0003p or 6p, whatever it is. So, you know, you've got to do 1 million of those before you'll get yourself a quid. It's you know, it's and I think the way to view that is if it's the equivalent of one radio play, you know, but you're not playing to 15 million people on Radio 1 as you used to.
No.
You're playing to one person 15 million times, you know, so 15 million people may click on and see your song. That's the equivalent of one play on Radio 1, which at least was worth back then 30 quid.
Yeah.
So, you know, so streaming's damaged the viability of the business model. And everyone's got this wrong. They
affects
know
the charts as well, because obviously.
Yeah, well, the charts now, you sell 60,000, that could put you at number one, but it's downloads, and the first week of release at 49p maybe, and they've given you away a freebie before that. So, you know, they're giving away music. Every time you do that, you cheapen it, and people think it's free, basically.
Sven Schumacher would like to know, was there any plans to record a full album under Stock Aitken Waterman as a group for yourselves? Like?
No, there were no plans to do that. Although, I mean, if the follow-up to Roadblock and other stuff that we would have done, I think, but it was only a throwaway thing we did. And the only reason we did Roadblock was we get so much stick from a credible guys in the industry who hated everything we did because it was pop, out and out pop, unashamed pop, and they didn't like it. But we were getting all the record sales, and so I threw that together on a Friday afternoon, just to sort of stick two fingers up. When we put it out, you know, we didn't say it was us. We weren't trying to fool the public. We were trying to
fool the DJs.
and the people.
And it worked.
It did, yeah, it did. Because you see, there's no magic in this. I regard myself as a musician, and I'll pick up a guitar, I'll play you a tune, I'll play you a riff, or I'll play you something or other. I'll get on the piano, I'll do the same thing. Somebody says to me something from the 70s, some of the 60s, let's play some Rodgers and Hammerstein, let's play some Irving Berlin, whatever. I'll turn my hand to anything. So I get insulted when people think, yeah, but all you can do is never going to give you up, and I should be so lucky.
Yeah.
They just think that's all you can do. You know, that irritates. Because I cut my fingers learning guitar when I was 10.
Mel Ajero would like to know, he said it's been said that it took Kylie and her management to bring yourself, Matt and Pete back together to work on the remix to Every Day's Like Christmas. Can we expect more from all three of you together again?
Well, listen, I can't say you can expect it, but there are talks going on which are at quite an early stage. I think Kylie's got to make some big choice about her life, really. You know, does she want to do more? I don't know, she may be thinking that I'll retire to Melbourne and put my feet up. But it has been suggested. We're all open to any possibility in that regard. Personally, I've had a stash of songs sitting away waiting for that moment when Kylie says, yeah, let's do some.
Specifically for Kylie?
Yeah, because I think I could do with her, something like what you might call a classic type of album. I mean, I've seen her in various concerts over the years, and I've found, you know, that the staging has taken over the songs. But she did sort of the anti-pop one a few years back. Do you remember that? And I loved that. And it was all very basic, but everyone in the crowd was just singing along. They felt part of it. I mean, there's this thing that's been going on with pop stars now for quite a number of years, where they're distance from the audience, playing in huge venues. They're a little dot in the distance, and you don't really feel a connection. But I have this sort of number of songs that I've done that I've said, when she's ready,
Are they, like you said, are they in the theme of, like you said, the classical stock Aitken Waterman sort of style?
Yeah, I think probably that's what you'd say, yeah.
Because she's gone through various different styles in her musical career.
Yeah, she has. But you see, like when she did the Abbey Road sessions, she took Finer Feelings and Never Too Late, just played like a jazz. I got a call from a relative of mine who's a songwriter, a famous songwriter in his own world. He didn't recognise it. He just phoned me up to congratulate me on the new song I'd written, because he'd seen it was written by me. And I said, that's just that song from that album, and he just thought it was, it reached him in that form, where it hadn't reached him in another form, you see. So I think...
Did you have any participation in that project? Like the arrangements?
No, I didn't. And they did a great job. But the point for me is that all of these songs, if they're decent classic songs for me, mean that you could sit here with a guitar and strum it and sing it.
Yep.
That's what I mean. That it's a song-based album with her style and all the other things that we've got to wrap into it. It's not an image-based or something based on some either conception or art house. I think it's, to me, the lyrics say what they're supposed to say, they tell the story, and you sing a tune to that, and you can dance to it, probably. That's all I mean by classic.
Michael Sylvester would like to know what happened about your recent work with Suzette Charles.
Suzette came over, and we're in contact now, and that's good. And the plan is to work with her in the next this year. I'm just trying to make space for it. Like I say, if I stopped taking on any new work, it'd still take me 5 years to complete what I've said I'd do. And she's just definitely one of those people that got a raw deal back then. I mean, it was at the time when PWL was falling apart and Matt had already gone, and there was a sort of a crumbling. And she was signed from RCA America into England, into the UK, and there was animosity between the labels there. So one of them saying, well, why would we promote her just to give them the glory? You know, so there was a bit of that going on. So she got caught in the crossfire, which is a big shame.
You also would like to know, are there any singles that you're embarrassed by? I'm assuming you mean songs that you've written.
No, the thing is that I've heard Pete answer something like that by saying, you know, he wouldn't change anything, it's all perfect. But I would go back and I'd rewrite the second verse of a couple of the songs where we didn't have time to concentrate, so you threw it away a bit. I would go back and change a few of those sorts of details, but I'm not 100% embarrassed of anything. But I would say that some of it suffered from the rush we were under, and also some of the artists themselves weren't quite good enough.
We're not going to mention any names.
No, we won't.